Yeah, cash-strapped Queensland smokers could be bankrolling organised crime gangs by turning to cheap black market cigarettes amid the costs of living crisis. Underworld rivals that they're waging an increasingly dangerous war for control of the lucrative illicit tobacco trade. As I said, desperate smokers are snapping up under-the-counter cigarettes for as little as $10 a packet. And then there's, just buying packets of tobacco, rolling their own. Amid this is a surge of tobacco shop arson attacks as the criminals, including outlaw bikies, try to muscle in. Tobacco shops in Queensland and interstate have been targeted in a spate of firebombings in a bitter turf war. Joining us now to discuss it is Dr Terry Goldsworthy, a former senior Queensland police detective. Good morning to you. Good to talk again.
Yeah, good morning, Bill.
How bad is this?
Look, it's kind of like a hidden market that's been growing. But, we have some data from the ATO. There was a study published this year that suggests that the ATO estimates that the value of illicit tobacco seized annually has increased from 135 million to 2 billion in 2020-21. So, that's a huge illicit market to be part of. And, the illicit tobacco market results in substantial loss of tax revenue. It funds organised crime. And I guess the bottom line is it perpetuates tobacco use, which undermines, our health priorities in terms of reducing the prevalence of smoking. So there are a lot of flow-on effects from this. Obviously, organised crime groups aren't silly. They recognise that this is a burgeoning market and they can make a substantial profit in it.
We just had a caller that said that they bought their illegal chop or whatever, and the bloke that sold it said it was $20 for this packet of 20, and he thought that was a good deal, but the bloke said, back home where we get this from, this would be 75 cents, and that was in Iraq. So there's obviously a lot of money in it if they're selling it for as cheap as that, and that the markups are that big on them. Where is most of the source of it coming from?
Yeah, look, the Australian Border Force, most of it seems to be coming from overseas, and in terms of, South America and some of those countries that have got the cartels and organised crime groups. So the ABF indicated that they'd seen a substantial increase in their border interceptions in terms of about 16%. Rise in the last reporting period for them. So the overseas transnational organised crime groups have certainly seen the value in Australia because we pay so much for our tobacco, which is part of our health response. We're pricing it up so people are deterred from buying it. But, it's interesting. Tobacco has always been a commodity that organised crime has been interested in. I can remember when I first went to plain clothes in the Queensland Police as a detective, I was working on the Gold Coast in a crime squad in the mid-1990s, and the big ticket crime that we had going on then was service stations being broken into and all their cigarettes being stolen. So, you can go back almost 30 years and tobacco cigarettes have featured prominently in organised crime type activities.
And do we know, you mentioned bikies, what sort of other underworld gangs are we talking here that are involved in this? And I guess there's probably a few of them, and this is part of the reason there's these fires happening, because there's competition.
Yeah, look, you'll have all kinds of local crime gangs that are involved in it. The bikers are the obvious ones that stand out, but there are plenty of other gangs out there. In terms of those groups, they would obviously have linkages overseas. We know 70% of their organised crime threats come from overseas, so that's obviously a factor in this as well, as indicated by the Border Force figures there. I guess the government is kind of aware of this. Last year they introduced some new laws, the Tobacco and Other Smoking Products Amendment Bill, where they sought to, strengthen up enforcement, which is undertaken primarily by authorised officers under the Health Department in terms of illicit tobacco sale and supply, introduced a licensing scheme for the sale of tobacco and things like that. So, just in Queensland alone, in the 2023-24, they seized 15 million illicit cigarettes, 6 tonnes of loose tobacco and 150,000 vapes. So you can see that the extent of the market there is quite extraordinary in terms of the amount of commodity that they're seizing. And you can imagine they're only seizing a certain amount of it, how much of it's not being seized.
Yeah. Well, after that fatal shooting of a suspected gangland figure in Melbourne, that was linked to the tobacco tensions. What are the chances of anything as serious as that happening up here? Where is it compared to Victoria?
Well, I think Victoria's a bit more advanced in terms of turf war than we are at this point in time. But look, all of these things are problematic. I mean, organised crime looks at the markets, look at which markets are moving, which ones are declining, where they can make the most profit, and they will seek to get in there. And if there's competing criminal groups, then it becomes, as you said, a turf war. Reputation is important to criminal groups, and use of violence is used to ensure, one, reputation is maintained, and two, getting market share. So there's nothing to suggest that we could not see similar events as is happening down in Victoria occurring up here in terms of arsons, etc. We've already had some, and those kind of extensions of violence increasing to perhaps murders, targeted murders, to ensure they have control of the market. So it's, as I said, it's interesting. It's actually enforced by the Health Department authorised officers, but they have run a number of combined operations with, the Crime and Corruption Commission, Border Force, etc. So it kind of straddles two areas, health management, health regulation, and then there's the criminal aspect where obviously law enforcement need to be involved.
I was going to say to you, how would the police have got their hands full just trying to cope with a lot of other stuff, youth crime, all that sort of thing? How are they ever going to get a chance to enforce some of these new laws that are coming in September and try and crack down on this? What's the answer with it in terms of law enforcement?
Well, you're right. I mean, we know from figures released in Parliament there's less police on the road than there were 12 months ago. So, I mean, the problem is, though, if you don't address things like these issues in tobacco, illicit tobacco markets, etc., and, you go, oh, they're just a health issue, they will steamroll into a major crime issue. So, I mean, unfortunately for the police, they will have to have some hand in this game to ensure it doesn't steamroll into those major crime incidents of arsons and murders, etc., because then they tie up police resources. So, you've got this issue going on, as you said correctly. We've got youth crime. We're at a 20-year high for the crime rate in Queensland. So whoever the new commissioner is when they get announced shortly would want to have a very clear plan and roadmap as to how they're going to attack these issues.
Well, Steve Goldsworthy is meant to be rubber stamped at some stage today, so I guess it'll fall in his lap. But isn't we've had a few callers say the same thing. And I get the motivation for pricing them so high to make people stop smoking, which makes a lot of sense. But on the other hand, isn't this what's driving this underworld or this black market by putting the prices up so high, making them unaffordable?
Oh, it does. And, it's interesting. You regulate and raise the prices so much, people will just look for a cheaper alternative in an illicit market. So you're actually funding and driving organised crime. Yeah,
you're creating the market almost.
Yeah, I mean, they'd probably be much better at putting more emphasis on a health response in terms of, rather than over-regulating, accept that people will continue to smoke, but then target them with health initiatives to get them off that addiction, rather than just trying to price it out of the realm. Because, if they're still addicted to smoking, etc., it doesn't matter how much you price it, they will seek it out, and they'll seek it out through illicit markets if they can't exit through the normal legal means.
And is it still as big with vapes? We're talking about tobacco a lot, but where's the vape market at?
Yeah, look, I think vapes are still very problematic for us. You can see that by the fact that in 12 months they seized 150,000 of them. And, they tend to be, my understanding is more addictive than cigarettes, traditional cigarettes, etc. And the younger people seem to like them more. So I think we've still got a big battle on there in terms of controlling that market. We've certainly taken some action nationally and state to try and limit the impact of the vapes, but I think that'll be ongoing for the next couple of years.
Yeah, all right. It's fascinating that it's thriving, and it's pretty drastic to go and set fire to a place, isn't it? So they mean business in terms of the competitiveness in this underworld of tobacco.
Yeah, look, and the setting fire is okay. It does damage to the shop and there's a physical loss there, etc. But that's all about an expression of power and protecting reputation. That's what that's about. It's a warning basically saying we'll burn your shop down today, and if you continue to compete with us, then the next step up may be physical harm to yourself.
Yeah, not nice. Thanks for giving us a bit of background, Terry. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bill.
Dr Terry Goldsworthy, former senior Queensland Police detective. Gee, it's